Well, after a snowy March, April is here. Maybe, just maybe, spring is about to, spring. We're at the White Lion on London Road. Welcome to episode 4 of the Sheffield Hopcast. Hello, I'm James Marriott. Welcome to the Sheffield Hopcast. Later on, we'll be catching up with Neepsend Brewery. We'll hear about last orders on one of our local breweries in Sheffield. Plus, we'll find out more about our venue tonight at the White Lion. Our theme for this Hopcast is pale ales. Now, we're thinking beers that are perfect for the first outside pint of the year. That's the kind of theme that we're looking at. Let's meet the squad then. Firstly, Hopcast co-host Adam Nicholson. What is your favourite beer of the last month?
Well, I went down to speak to Gav and Hannah at Neepsend, and then afterwards travelled down to their brewery tap, which is the Wellington, and I had their Woden, which is I think it's a dry hopped oat ale, I think it is, like 5.2%.
Still good coming with a favourite beer and looking at everybody else for your description.
5.2%, one of those pints you could just literally, as soon as you taste it, that is perfectly like clean, really good flavour. You could just drink loads of it. Really good pint. Woden by Neepsend.
Very good. Sean of Beer Central fame, your favourite beer of the month?
Great to have a sunny night for our fits perfectly with our weather predictions for the pale ales tonight. My favourite beer of last month was New Zealand beer. We got some bottles across from Tuatara, New Zealand. Some fantastic breweries down there, and they have a pale ale called Kapai, American pale ale, and again clean, crisp, bitterness, which again I keep harking back to, but loved it. And I'm just leaning towards those sort of lower ABV pale ales, so tonight's perfect for me.
Excellent. Unfortunately, Laura can't be with us on the Hopcast this month, and we were kind of racking our brains thinking who would be the best person to fill the boots of Mrs. Rangeley. Who better than Mr. Rangeley? Jim, Laura's husband, and also, and this is the description that we agreed on, Abbeydale's funk master.
We can go with that, yeah.
I'm sorry, Laura.
Right? I'm sorry, Laura can't
I have
be
been
here.
practicing.
And all avid listeners and fans of Laura are no doubt going to be disappointed.
Well, a warm welcome. What's been your favourite beer of the last month, Jim?
I have to say it was the Arbor. I had a pint of Arbor, both on cask and keg, and it was their Chasing Caterpillars, and it was like 4.7 cask beer, and it tasted great. It was right on. The cask was right on point where it should be. There was great service on it. The condition was great. Really good hop character that it had.
Where did you have it?
On keg, it was in the Beer Engine, and on cask, I believe it was in Shakespeare. But it was just one of those pints that you could just drink all afternoon.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the weather
And you did.
for today.
Drink responsibly all afternoon.
Yeah.
Don't walk into any road.
4 hours.
Yeah.
Our self-confessed beer virgin, Rich Davies, is here. Rich, what's been your favourite beer of the
You
last?
stole my line. I was going to use that one. Well, you'll be glad to know it's not Belgian Blue this time. I suppose the last podcast I was on was at the Rutland, and we had the name it. I can't remember it. The stout that we had.
Little critters.
Yeah.
Nutty Ambassador.
Yeah, and since that I've really got into stouts, and I've never been into them. And there's two really, and I bought them both from Sean. And it was the Stay Puffed one.
Tiny Rebel.
Yeah, and your Ski Sunday.
Okay, good
Which
luck.
were, which I demolished.
Fudge brownies.
I'd say it's North Riding's, if anyone else.
It was I don't think Stu listens, so it was our beer. And 5 times at Wakefield.
I do need to actually add another thing. The beer I said was actually a collaboration with North Riding as well.
Okay.
It's not just a Neepsend one. Just for clarification.
He did come on.
They're all collaboration beers tonight. My beer of the month. You see, I'm going to go one better. I'm going for a 3-way collaboration beer, which I think came out a few weeks ago. I had it up in Glasgow a couple of weeks back, and it's the North Wylam and Track three-way collaboration, which is LDS, MCR, NCL, or Leeds, Manchester, Newcastle, which is double IPA. And to be honest, it was one of those beers that when I bought it, sat down to drink it, I wasn't really expecting anything spectacular, and it blew me away. It was a phenomenal beer, really nice, and just right up kind of the street of what I'm enjoying at the moment, which is those kind of hazy, quite thick kind of double IPAs. And I thought it was superb. So there we go. Some good beer chat there to get us going.
So just to get that right, you had a three-way that blew you away?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, double check that.
So that was.
Basically,
I mean,
you took the female out and
it was around about kind of 9%. So with that in mind, what beer are we starting with tonight, Sean?
2.9% tonight. So
we're going for a small.
We're grabbing hold of the sunshine, and we're going to just perhaps to come back to Jim's point early, something that perhaps you can slurp all afternoon, or sit back and relax and just de-stress. So first beer is 2.9%. It's a new range that Cloudwater from Manchester are starting to develop. And they're all called small, so small Loral pale. So Loral is the hop in this one, and they've done a range of different beers, 2.8, 2.9, with different hops in there. I've been drinking these quite a lot quite recently. I think they're fantastic, and again shows the skill of the brewer. I had a triple IPA from Cloudwater the other day. What was that? 10%, 2.9%. So when breweries can really jump to both ends of the scale and make things very drinkable, I think it shows a remarkable skill. So we'll kick off.
I think it's a really good point, isn't it, about how good, and I think we've touched on this before, how good the low ABV beers have become over the last, probably the last 12 months particularly.
Going
because
back,
I wouldn't really, I didn't really want to sort of entertain them, and then I think it was a Cloudwater. I think it was the Vic Secret one. Was one of the first ones I had,
out at a minute.
and I couldn't get my head around just how tasty it was, how really really good it tasted.
Going back 2 or 3 years, the two sort of market leaders were Buxton did one called Jacob's Ladder, and that was at 2.8%, and again started to turn a corner really in terms of getting lots of flavour into low ABV. And then Siren did one, a quarter IPA, a Quipper, or half mast it was called, and that was in the same territory. Then there seems to have been a bit of a gap for it, and then the void is now being filled with Cloudwater releasing these on a regular basis over the last 6 weeks or so. So good stuff.
How many are you seeing come into stock now? Because it is becoming more and more common, isn't it?
The small ABVs, you mean, or Cloudwater? Yeah,
I mean
Cloudwater are leading the way at the moment. There aren't that many sub 3%.
Because Kernel's table beer is just over 3%.
Yes, it is 3.2ish of us round.
So why are they going lower? Just because obviously I'm the beer virgin. What's the thought process behind going
perhaps
lower?
2 things. One, I'm guessing at, but it shows remarkable skill and versatility as a brewery. And 2, I think there's a market for it. They're selling great, so there's clearly a market for it. And we're midweek particularly, it works really nicely.
etc.
I mean, and again, I don't know what your comments are on it or thoughts are on it.
Like for a long time, people have been trying to push the boundaries upwards. So whether it's on bitterness, it was a few years ago, and then it was the amount of dry hopping, and it's 30 grams a litre of dry hopping, and then it's alcohol, or it's like bitterness, or it's something. But I think pushing it that way only gets you so far, because you reach a point where chucking more stuff at a thing doesn't make it better. Whereas if you can hone one of those things back, because alcohol carries all that mouthfeel, all that body, whereas less alcohol but still tasting as full in the mouth and as still tasty.
I suppose the analogy you can use is like a curry. You know, if it's dead hot, you can't taste it at all. So if you bring it down, you can actually taste the the food and stuff.
It reveals more skill. I think it reveals more skill.
And chucking loads of chilies at a farl is not really. It doesn't mean anything. Whereas if you're kind of looking really well at the bits of spices that go into that. Yes, you're right. It
sounds silly to say in that this we retail at $3.50 a can, because to many people out there, $3.50 for 1 can of beer is ridiculously expensive compared with what they would be used to perhaps from the supermarket. But it also gives breweries like Cloudwater an entry point at a lower price level. So not everybody's going to pay £6 for a triple IPA or £5 for an IPA, and so it gives them a lower entry point. And we're seeing that. You can see that with the people picking up these types of beers in the shop. You can see they're different to what Cloudwater customers would normally be, and it gives them an entry point. And it's clever then from Cloudwater, because next time up someone will go for a pale ale, pay a little bit more, and get a little bit more ABV out of it at say 5.5%, and then away you go then.
And it's a beautiful beer as well.
Yeah.
It's got a real nice kind of orange kind of flavour that really comes
clean
through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's partially there's a yeast profile there that's kind of nice and aromatic. It's got a nice.
I think you're right with mentioning
aromatic
mouthfeel earlier. It does. You get it. You don't feel as if it's watery in any way as you're drinking it.
But
But you lovely feel.
And looking at what's gone into it, so there's. I'm going to sound really sad here, but there's like dextrin malt, oat malt, wheat malt, and maltodextrin, as well as some other kind of oats, and all of those have less fermentable sugars, which mean they leave some sugar still left over in the beer, which means they get more of a mouthfeel. You get kind of more of a feel from all those kind of additional malts. So it's a really complex malt bill, even though it still looks the same as all the rest of the pale malts. But it's that kind of.
It reminds me of one of my little favourites, Elvis juice. It's got that kind of.
Yeah, it's definitely got like a citrusy, tropical kind of thing going on.
I think going back like a few years, like I remember the first one under 4%, which I thought was like had the flavour profile is like Wild Swan by
Yeah.
and like
good.
having that
Yeah,
cast
very good.
at 3.5%, you can still get that now. I mean, I think we're kind of in a society now where like hops are just taking over, so maybe it would probably taste in comparison to the beers not quite as hoppy. But I remember tasting that when I was probably more like junior kind of ale drink, thinking, my God, that is hoppy. And like I would still kind of go to a Wild Swan now. That's another beer that you can probably get quite easily in Sheffield, like we've got what 5, 6
Any Thornbridge
pubs,
pubs.
basically,
Yeah.
and in bottle. So yeah, but this is fantastic beer. I really enjoy it.
Something interesting that Cloudwater have done recently as well is change the dating codes on the bottom of their cans. So looking on this one, you get 3 dates now, whereas traditionally it used to be 2 canned on date and then a best before, but they used to have really tight best befores because of course they want their beers to be sub fresh. And now they've gone with a third, so you now get a canned on date. This was canned on the 19th of March. You get then a freshest best before, so that's the date really that Cloudwater, I think that that's when you want to really be drinking this beer by. But
pulling your calendar for this day. Yeah.
But if you're still picking this beer up a little bit later, it has then the traditional best before as well. So they're giving you a little nod with that middle date as to what they think. But then still are falling in line with sort of standard procedures in terms of the final best before.
I've got a few thoughts on that, but I don't want to go into it. But like, I don't know how much bullshit's in that. But
I mean, cause is it for the consumer, or is it for the retailer?
I think for
retailer. Is it for Sean who will take a box of cans and there's only a week left on it, and then at that point it becomes unsellable almost because whereas if you have there's what we recommend drinking date, but still a use by date.
People really tell though, like the normal drinker, are they going to tell?
In a way, I think it's quite useful
They should at least know.
Yeah,
they should at least.
And you should know the difference, and
not know the difference, but know when it was canned.
Or be aware of that it might not be quite.
I mean, for any given time, I've normally got about 10 beers in my fridge, and sometimes I can be a bit indecisive, and sometimes I struggle to decide which one to drink next. So what I'll basically do is look at the dates and think, which is the one that needs drinking the soonest. But those dates are not necessarily a particularly good guide as to, it might be a beer actually that was made the furthest back ago or something like that. But it's just the way that date works.
I think the main issue is supermarket dating. It's not so much Sean, because Sean pays attention to all his and small bottle shops do pay attention to their stock. They know when they bought it, they know what it is, but it's when
we get it quick,
and you get it
direct.
You can get it quick, and even if it doesn't come out of their cold store as quickly as you want to receive it, whatever. But it will sit on a supermarket shelf, and I saw saw something on Twitter where people had seen cans of Stone that were like 2 or 3 months out of date, and on final dates, still on shelves in Tesco's, and they're the kind of biggest preventer of good beer going to the to the general populace. It's all right us sitting around talking with Sean bringing us all these beers, but when beers are being consumed in basically mass from supermarket purchases and they're all out of date, they're going to be bad. And people are going to get a bad image of what beer tastes like.
Is it the supermarket that are driving it now? Because all these guys at the end of the day...
Well, don't sell to supermarkets.
They don't, right?
No.
Right,
so in their
enough.
particular case, though, they do have retailers that sometimes they are down the line. So we're very lucky. We're just over the Pennines from Manchester. We hide out Turner's Dram Shop, order our Cloudwater on a Friday. It comes on a Tuesday, and it's just been canned that previous week. So we're very lucky. We can get it quick. Yeah. We've got a savvy public in Sheffield. We can sell them quick as well. Somebody might be down in a different part of the country. Their beer is not coming direct from Cloudwater. It's gone to a wholesaler first. Could even go somewhere else before it reaches the retailer. And you can be really down the line on stuff. Yeah. And so this doesn't just actually help the retailer, but I think it's a useful little thing for customers.
It's useful for everyone to know.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a mention. It's like it's one of the things that is it a marketing thing or is it actually? I think
we're talking about it, so it must be something.
I can buy a bottle of beer that's got maybe 2-3 years on it, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not noticing any difference between it. One that I bought.
I think you would if it was hoppy. I think
possibly. That's what I'm saying. It's a question.
If it's a stout, then it will be better. It will be better. If a stout goes out of date, then its value rises and its taste profile.
It has an impact on you. I mean, I've bought beers from you, and I bought beers from Jules or Bideout, which have been in kind of the bargain basement bin thing, which because I think breweries like Brew by Numbers, a very clear labelling system where it's this is when you shouldn't be drinking after or ideally, and you kind of have to go right. I'm going to knock a couple of quid off that, and so is Jules. And I'm drinking, thinking, pretty sure that tastes exactly the same as I expected it to taste. And if it's just a day,
somebody's actually
is it a bit overkill?
Yeah, a fair number of breweries now to counter that, and I know Cloudwater have done it, and they will do tastings based on the age to show you the difference, because generally we wouldn't be able to work out the difference as general drinkers, but they will take you to a tasting, sit you down and say, right, this here has been refrigerated at 5 degrees for 6 weeks, taste that, this one has been longer, and you can show the stage of deterioration then, a lot easier.
Well, I think it's for a 2.9. It is a lovely beer. We're going to get our second beer lined up. In the meantime, we'll find out a little bit more about our venue tonight at the White Lion.
My name's John Terry. I run the White Lion alongside my partner Mandy Billings. We've been here for 3 years, and we've currently changed from Punch Taverns over to Heineken.
Brilliant. So just tell us a little bit more about the pub for people who've probably not been up this way.
So it's a traditional ale house. It's been a pub since 1781. It's had various owners over the last few years. Took a dive for quite a while. We were always customers for here. I took a voluntary redundancy from work and we took it on, and it's back to how it was. We kind of modelled it on what we liked about the pub in the first place, and looked at the core elements about what we enjoyed and brought those key elements back, and people came flocking back in as a result.
So for the ale drinkers out there, kind of what kind of brewers and what kind of beers do you generally have on tap here?
So we have Aberdale Moonshine as a core regular. We're in Sheffield after all, it's practically a given. We're an old school Tetley's house, so we keep Tetley's. We have Hobgoblin purely because we have a core group of people who come in who drink nothing but Hobgoblin, and they're our kind of our bread and butter customers. And then we have a Kellam Island beer that's extra hopped for us, and that's our house beer. Every other beer we have 10 to 11 lines on at any time. Our rotation, so the other, apart from those 4, we have 6 beers and 1 cider that constantly change after every 9, swap it out for another beer every time. So we've featured everybody from Dancing Duck to Vibrant Forest to Verdant to Dark Star, anything we can get our hands on that we consider to be good and worthwhile as a beer.
So, like, you're kind of situated in the Healy kind of Mearsbrook area. That's kind of becoming a little bit of a good crawl these days. For people who have not been up this way, can you kind of talk about sort of the area really?
Yeah,
Now it's good for.
It's an amazing area now. It's almost like a mini Kelham Island. Before it just used to be the Sheaf round here, Sheaf View as a real ale pub, and then Shakespeare got took over it's now the Brothers Arms. We've got here now. We've got the Tram Shed up the road. We've got Hop Hideout, which are equally amazing in poor beer in there. We've got the Broadfield next to it. It's becoming a real kind of path for people who like real ale. You know, I think the days of people just going to a pub and staying in there all night are pretty much over when there's such a variety of choice out there. I mean, the beauty of it is that all of us work together, so we make sure we never have the same beers on at the same time, even if we've got them in our cellar. So if you're a beer lover, unless you could drink 60 different pints in one night, you would never be able to. You could walk around all night and you would never find the same beer twice. And I think that's a really good thing, and it proof why joined up working is so important in the industry at the moment.
So to kind of finalise in a few words, how would you describe the pub, and how would you kind of get people to come to this pub?
How would I describe the White Lion? It's I would describe it as a classic, traditional, old school boozer. Lots of little rooms, very much predominantly focused on real ale and spirits, particularly the whiskey. We're a music-led venue as well, but I think above all of that, our focus for it was and remains that it's a community pub. We put so much stuff on here for the local community. Our rooms are constantly utilised. We do fundraisers for local concerns, and that's kind of really what's important to us. I want people to come in here, and when they come in, I know them by name and they know me by name, and if they go missing for 3 days, I want to know where they are and are they all right. You know, that's the kind of things that's important to me as a pub.
A big thank you to John and the team for making us feel so welcome tonight. We should point out they have got live music on later on. There is a band that's going to be doing a sound check at some point. Now, we're right at the front of the pub in a little room of our own. The band are at the opposite end of the pub, so hopefully you won't suddenly hear in the background halfway through us chatting a band, you know, breaking into some kind of Simple Minds tribute or whatever it is that they're going to be. But
is that what it is? Simple Minds tribute.
It's gone for like.
No, I made that up.
All right, thank you.
Right, on to our second beer of the night, and this is a true story. On Saturday, Sean, I came into Beer Central, and I was having a bit of a look around, and I saw this one beer on the shelf, and I went, what on earth is Sticklebract? And you gave me a thorough and, I'm assuming, factually correct,
patronising reply.
Because this is a Sticklebract Pale Ale.
Sticklebract Pale Ale. The brewery is Kernel.
The Kernel.
And based down in Bermondsey in London, and as a brewery, one of my favourites particularly. Simple approach and a real sort of anti-craft approach, I suppose, in the sense of that they don't go for any serious marketing gimmicks. For anyone that's familiar with the bottle, plain brown label, not changed since they started, and they let the beer do the talking, to use a little bit of a thank you, Jim. Let the beer do the talking, and they don't tend to. They've got a variety of different styles, but they have lots of core pales using New Zealand and American hops predominantly, a few Australian hops as well. They do some nice imperial browns and export London stouts using historic recipes. They have things like currently damson saisons and a honey saison, and there's been a sour cherry recently. Occasionally do one-off specials, but more generally the table beer, which would link in with the one that we had earlier on, just over 3%. But simple approach, part of the sort of Bermondsey Beer Mile originally, but now on a Saturday they do open the brewery, but only for people to buy and take away. And for a spell, that Bermondsey Beer Mile down in East London became a real sort of a mad affair every Saturday, and lots of crowds, lots of people. I've been to Kernel twice on that, and rammed, lots of tight space, and I think in the end, Kernel thought, well, are we enjoying this? People were complaining about queuing up and toilets and all sorts of different things. So in the end, they just said, we've had enough of this. We'll sell our beer, you can take it away. And there are obviously lots of other outlets still down in Bermondsey, and it's still a popular thing. But I admire Kernel for sort of turning their back on what perhaps would have been a very lucrative thing for them, but perhaps not necessarily the most enjoyable experience every Saturday. And so the beers, though, they fly out popular all over the country.
You always seem to have quite a lot on, and they seem to be kind of knocking out different beers at quite a rate at the moment. I think every time I come in, there seems to be different.
They do. We only touch a small sort of.
I've never really thought about that. What you were saying, it was really like there's never really kind of been a big push in that kind of marketing thing. They've just kind of done what they do well, and I can't think of personally, I can't think of a brewery before them that did this very simple, right, this is a pale ale, the difference this time, this is the strength, this difference this time is this variety of hops, and just moved it on. And I think probably back then, oh God, I don't know, when did it kind of come in, 2007, maybe something like that? I remember seeing those beers and thinking, oh, what's that mean? And it's a hop variety.
It's that clarity of design where it's just pale hop, but also kind of transfers from the brewing. It is just like getting the best out of what they are using, and why try and hide that behind a name when it's a pale ale and it has Sticklebract. It's a pale ale that's got Citra and Galaxy in it. That's what those things, and for me, they produce the best version of that hop in a pale ale. If you want to know what a hop tastes like, the Kernel have the best version of those kind of hop flavours, because there's no messing around. They just cram the flavour into those beers without being pretentious about it. But
in a way, it sort of shows the scale now, doesn't it, of the market, in terms of that you've got a brewery like, we've got a Magic Rock beer, which we're going to have later on, who, their cans are the most wonderful designs and almost a work of art in themselves sometimes. The names often bear very little resemblance to the actual beer, but they make great beer. And then at the other end of the scale, you've got someone like the Kernel, who very understated, not trying to be anything clever. There's no clever kind of naming thing going on. It is just, it is a bit like the old Ronseal ads, isn't it?
Exactly.
It is what it says on
exactly
on the bottle. Both, equally worthy of praise for what they do. And I think fair play to the Kernel for not kind of buckling under any kind of pressure for the way trends have gone in beer. They've remained exactly the same in terms of their labelling, their marketing,
and the quality of output as well.
And they've stayed true to those kind of core values and are reaping the benefits from it, because there aren't many beer shops that are going now that don't stock their beers, and that's a sign of the fact that they're obviously shifting them.
I mean, if you look at it, it literally is a 2-inch strip of brown parcel kind of wrapped and
it is beautiful.
It looks like it's been printed
simple,
on like an old
simple,
dot matrix printer. Like, there's like imperfections in it completely, but it's classic as hell. Like I said, I do graphic design as a living. I love that.
But they probably are, but that's fine.
Don't matter. Just looks great.
Rich, have you had any of these before?
No, it's the first one I've had, and that's really nice. I could sit and drink a few pints of that. It's quite a drinkable.
It's got a real bitterness to it, hasn't it?
Quite sharp. As a brewery, you'll find that probably, most days, they always have one on Shakespeare, don't they? And it tends to be their kind of IPA range, which is kind of in the mid 6%. Yeah. And I can guarantee that if I scan the bar and there's nothing that takes my fancy, I can literally just point at the Kernel and go, that will be amazing, and it will be. You know exactly what you get. It's crisp, it's flavoursome, it's just exactly what they've always done, and I think it's brilliant.
Even they either have the pale ales, the IPAs, or the Export London Porter, which again is just cracking.
Sours. I remember them being like one of the first breweries. I remember doing a sour.
Yeah.
And thinking they're like 3.5% ones.
Yeah.
So it was like London sour as well.
Because those aren't
really
like
good.
the modern technique of them is kind of, or the past few years is kettle souring, which is. Whereas I don't believe they are. They've got an aging project that's kind of starting to come into fruition, and the beer de saison, the Damson, which we can rewind the tape. If we can restart the whole conversation and have my beer of the month, it was the Damson.
Yeah.
And that's like an aged oak beer that's then been blended and then sat on fruit for a few months, but with loads and loads of damsons, and it's incredible. But the kind of the time that those beers need, which is probably 9 months before it's been blended on average, and then it's gone and sat on fruit for another 3 months. But they've built that barrel stock, and they've built a kind of slow release of really, really top quality, delicious kind of tart beer. It's great that they're kind of investing in.
They're a brewer's brewery, I would guess. I would imagine, talk to most brewers across the country, and they've either been influenced in some way or supported in some way by Kernel. They don't do many collaborations in the sense of, again, that being a sort of marketing idea for a beer, but I think they collaborate all the time with people behind the scenes. I know they help Brew by Numbers set up their operation. I think by giving them their original brew kit.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, as an honourable mention, if you can't find Kernel, probably look for Brew by Numbers. I would personally say that
5-minute walk
on
away.
a par with kind of the styling and quality, really.
But also almost anti-branding
just very
literally
similar.
numbers.
Yeah.
The first number is the style of beer. The second number is the iteration of that
number,
style, and it's a really kind of simple way of just beer. The number of times we've done it.
I almost I'll put it out there. If I can only drink Kernel and Brew by Numbers beers the rest of my life, I'd probably
you'd be very happy. I suppose if that would be what we ask at the start each time of our beer of the month. But if you were to say you could only drink one brewery for the rest of your life, I think Kernel would get a lot of votes for that, because they are supremely consistent. Very, very rarely make any errors with anything, and only release again stuff that is acceptable to them. We mentioned in the break that sometimes beers can be released a little bit too early and be a bit too raw. In their particular case, they're always exquisite is a word I always like to use for Kernel.
I think what I'm getting from that is that they're kind of concentrating on making a good beer rather than just being all commercial and right, we've got to do this, it's got to taste like this because the masses like it tasting like this. Like a Carlin or a Skull. I knew it gets
just to kind of close it a bit, like literally on a beer shelf, if you said design a label that would hide away as much as you could possibly do, there's not really much that you can do.
No.
Brown bottle, lighter brown label, slightly
but
like
it
black
stands
text.
out almost more than anything else.
It's the old phrase, let the beer do the talking.
Because everyone else is trying with
Yeah,
colour
so
and
hard.
trying, and then there's this. And same with Brew by Numbers. It's just white. It's
white with black.
white and black, or
They've
brown
gone. They've gone cans, of course, now. So
Well, they're still very
fancy the new design cans.
Is it
They're
all?
very nice, isn't
Are
it?
they all canned, or is it just
No. They've just gone with 3 so
They are
far.
nice.
I think there's a 4th just been released.
They're nice,
So I don't think they're going to go.
I've not had any of the cans.
The design head-on says
Got the
Pale
liquor
Ale's
in
been
it.
best I've had it last year.
Really?
While we're on the subject of breweries, often on the Hopcast, in fact just now on the Hopcast, we've kind of touched on our favourite breweries, and particularly kind of new breweries that we've discovered as something that we talk about quite a bit. This week though, we have the sad news of one of the Sheffield breweries closing down. Now Emmanuel's is kind of a unique brewery, bringing together, well, beer and the Bible, I guess. I went along to find out a bit more.
I'm Nick. On my business card it says the Brewing Boulding Modern Monk. So I kind of felt that was a better title than just head brewer or whatever for Emmanuel's. But I kind of summarised who I am. So I'm Boulding and a dad and just a sort of regular family guy. I make beer and I have a sort of personal faith. as a Christian. So I kind of felt that summarised me pretty well.
As we sit here now, it's the Tuesday after the bank holiday Easter weekend, which has been a fairly significant weekend for you personally, because you kind of made a bit of an announcement about yourself and your direction on Good Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I had somebody say, it was Ed actually from Hopjacker say, it was a very timely announcement, you're going to make a resurrection on Easter Sunday. I can assure you it wasn't planned like that. For a while I've kind of felt that, as I've observed the craft beer industry and done a lot of research into it, it's just become really apparent that you've really got to hunker down, and if you want to sort of make a real go of it. And I think in my mind when I started Emmanuel's, I was always wanting to pitch it alongside, your big breweries like Siren Craft and Northern Monk, which is a really tall order, and it was total blue sky thinking. But as I sort of realised that without an absolute mountain of cash, the financial back you need and the time commitment you need to do that, I started to realise that maybe a better business model for it would be better. But then running a sort of a brewery already, so I'm the head brewer of the Sheffield Brewery Company, and Emmanuel sort of slips into that. I think it became really apparent that I was spinning too many plates. I can't afford my own brewery, and on the flip side, I'm not sure I'll fully want to. You end up working every hour that God sends all the time. And I'm not shy about doing hard work, but the question becomes how effective. I read a lot of business books, and there's one called The E-Myth by a guy called Michael Gerber. It was written in like the 80s. But he talks about small business owners are always doing it, but never getting it done. And they never focus on the things that are actually going to be effective and fruitful. They're just busy. And I think I realised that I needed to give my time to one or the other, and I'm not really in a position to give my time to Emmanuel's in the way that I'd want it, and to develop that brand and for it to be all that it could be.
How successful do you feel that the brand's become in the time that you've been doing it?
I think it has been successful. A friend of mine called Nigel, he used to own the Ranmore Inn and other pubs in Sheffield. He said to me when I was sort of chatting through with him, he was like, don't look at it as like, oh, you failed. He was like, you've effectively, you left a mega church to start a microbrewery, because I used to work in a church, and you've done it. You developed the idea and you grew it. And because I was always worried with the sort of religious imagery that people wouldn't accept it for some reason, because they think I had like a hidden agenda, and there was no hidden agenda with it. I always sort of made it clear to people I'm not forcing religion down people's throats, just beer, and I'm just doing it in a way that I express myself in a quirky way, and in a way that's almost sort of poking fun at my own tribe. But actually people really took to the brand, and I actually found that it wasn't Christians who were into that much. They were at first, they saw it, and some people knew me or knew of me and were like, that's a great idea, and they'd go and buy it, but then they don't really drink that much beer, so it'd kind of like drop off. And then you sort of craft beer drinkers be drinking it. But I think the problem I found was, because I'm trying to sort of effectively shoehorn Emmanuel's into the Sheffield Brewery Company business model, I wanted to upscale those beers. I could only really warrant brewing sort of core range stuff, because I had to, although I'd obviously commit some of that to bottle, I'd have to commit it to cask as well, and the cask could sell well. But I think the people who were really behind the brand initially were people that were buying beers from like Beer Central and Urban Pantry and the Dram Shop and places like that. And as you probably know, with a lot of sort of craft beer drinkers, there's not that much brand loyalty anymore. It's not kind of like, I only drink Punk IPA or whatever it is. Everyone wants something different all the time, and I couldn't give it that. And I thought, well, maybe I can just go back to doing stuff on the little kit of mine that is housed here at the brewery, but trying to brew on that and brew the main stuff upstairs, it wasn't feasible in terms of quality. And it was always meant to be about really high quality beers. Because if I'm putting the image of our Lord and Saviour on a beer, it had to be like, the best beer there was. It very much in the vein and spirit of the sort of the Trappist monks, which is where I sort of drew the inspiration from. So
we hear a lot about kind of new breweries that are starting up, and perhaps not so much about breweries that are maybe calling it a day. How saturated do you think the craft beer industry is now?
Gosh, that $1 million question. I think yes and no, I guess, is the answer to that. It's funny because people talk about growth within the craft beer industry, and there is still room for growth. I mean, depending on where the statistic comes from, you're only looking between craft beer only accounts for between 3 and about 7 to 9% of UK British beer sales. That's like about just over 90% then of people who drink beer who are buying macro brand beers. So you've got that on one hand. And then on the other hand, I think it was about 10 years ago, the UK was selling 2 billion less pints than they would have done 10 years ago. So, but that's a lot of beer that people aren't consuming. We see that pubs are closing down about 10 or 11 every day across the nation. So you've got people drinking less for reasons that, that they are more health conscious nowadays. They want to drink less, but they want to drink better. I mean, because even 10, 15 years ago, when I go into a pub, your choices were Tetley, John Smith's, and then like Aberdale Moonshine or Kellum Easy Rider. I know what I was going to go for. Like, I know which two had bags more flavour. Whereas now, stuff that would have been like the tasteful alternative is sort of seen as old hat. So you've got all that coming into play. And then I think on the other hand, you've just got a lot of people all vying for a very small market share. So although I think there's growth for people like your Magic Rocks, your Northern Monks, your Beaver Towns, and even some of the other sort of smaller craft breweries that will kind of wheedle their way through, that will grow quickly because they get a good reputation for making good beer. They've got a really solid brand. But I think it will sort of separate the wheat from the chaff in a lot of ways. And personally, I think a lot of breweries, both established and particularly newer breweries that haven't got their shit together, basically will go under. I just want to thank all my customers, whether they're being sort of trade customers or just sort of beer drinkers, just for supporting me on that journey. But I want to thank people in the sort of beer industry who have sort of helped just to encourage people to go out and buy the last Emmanuel's there are and look out for the Last Supper, which is the last Emmanuel's beer I'll be doing. It's just a double IPA, about 9.6%.
So thank you to Nick for his time. Very soon Emmanuel's will be no more. Interesting kind of point that this raises really about whether or not the market, and particularly the kind of floppy bunny ears craft beer market, is becoming too saturated. Jim, you're kind of in the middle of it really. The project that you lead at Abbeydale is very much kind of about that side of the brewery. What's your thoughts on this?
But I think the kind of thing as a whole, no. The industry as a whole, no, it's not oversaturated with breweries. What we're lacking in is taps on bars and space to pour those beers into.
Okay.
There's a lot of taps in every city that are tied up by big pub chains. So whether it's Robinson's and that in the kind of towards the Peak District, towards Manchester, there's a lot of Fuller's pubs that are starting to open their taps a little bit, and then there's still a lot of pub chains that tie up all these taps that could potentially open up a lot of customers to a lot of really good beer, and we're kind of struggling in the middle to find that. With Emmanuel's, I think it's a really bold choice for him to do, is to try and focus all his attention into one brand.
I think what you said there is kind of about the tap space, and I'm not a big Wetherspoons fan, but they certainly seem to kind of grasp hold of, they give space for local breweries that you can get a pint of. I'm going to pick Bradfield as an example, because it's down the Rawson at Hillsborough. You can get a pint at Bradfield Brewery, and of what the ones that see the chain ones, they're the ones that actually give tap space to local breweries.
They do give tap space, but they also give very little money back to the actual brewery. And so that pint of beer might be £2. Generous, it might be £1.80. And then you go in with your camera membership card, it'll be 50p off. The fact that you can go in and get a pint for £1.30 at this point is ridiculous, because with all the costs that go into that brewery and for that cask of beer, that is not.
That's what that brewery's gambling though then on that customer remembering, and if it's a good beer, customers will remember that good beer, and then we'll go and pay more for it somewhere else. You can't have both, can you? In terms of
it then becomes
tax
the
base
supermarket scenario, doesn't it? Where they're taking more and more. They're just doing this with the profits.
Yeah.
Less and less to the brewer, more to them.
A friend of mine I work with, he was talking today, in Rutland, talking to a Kate, and saying that on a Monday you can get a pint of Jaipur for £2.20. And he's like, how would you do that? And he's like, well, they have this cask beer Monday thing, plus I have my camera discount, and that knocks it down to £2.20 a pint. And he's like, well, you're saying that, generally speaking, it's not cheap to get Jaipur. And Jaipur is still a solid beer.
It's a lovely beer, but it should be.
Is everybody not amazed that would be a motivator for someone going out and drinking that beer, or not?
What do you mean, sir?
Does that draw him out on a Monday night? The £2.20 is the key to that person going out on a Monday night.
When Monday not people don't go out.
But is that his motivation? If it is, then he's always going to be.
The flip side is it a loss leader? Is it
just to get rid of
it gets someone in the pub and
it is a loss leader. We're making money on food, thinking.
You look at
sorry.
You look at the number of pubs probably over the winter of closing on Monday and a Tuesday because there's not enough people coming in. So they're like, right, we'll just but now they're chucking as much discount as they can to get people in to buy the beers. Yeah.
The flip side of this, of course, is the kind of the bottle and the can market. So, question to you, Sean. Really, I mean, you must get the option of various new breweries probably every week, every month, and you've got to make that decision as to whether or not you take those beers on. How do you make
not
that
as many
kind
as you'd imagine? I use just instinct and customers more than anything else. Sometimes a customer will find out about a beer or a brewery before I do. It happens regularly. Message me, have you seen this? And my awareness, my eyes are opened, and I can instantly try and contact us who might be supplying that. But not as many as you think, largely down to distribution. So similar a little bit to Jim, but there might be a brilliant brewery in Cornwall, but being in Sheffield, it's hard to get that beer in the right quantities. If we took a pallet off someone, we'd have to pile it high. Of lots of the same beers, and that's not the model that would work. So access to beers depends on the distribution chain, and we're in a big city like Sheffield. We're very, very lucky that there's good distribution into Sheffield, but there are still lots of breweries that we would love to stock that it's just not possible to do it. It's not.
But it's down to your market, because me and James joked about some of the breweries that we think are very good brewers, but you don't really sell well.
Yeah.
And like I said, it comes down to, as a business, if you're not selling them, why would you ever get them in?
Yeah,
it's interesting. It's an interesting
we try lots of breweries.
To all and things like that.
Yeah, we've talked about this a couple of times just recently, and we try lots of breweries. And it would be nice to reward perhaps with more patience. But we're a business. All of the bottle shops and pubs and bars and micro pubs are all businesses. So you have to pick and choose and try and second guess a little bit what your customers would like. So a lot of that is down to instinct. I'm sure if we asked Adam down at Shaky, who orders all their beer down there, he knows about beer. It's his instinct. He knows his customers. We get to know our customers really well. Breweries get to know their customers really well within the craft scene because there's a much closer contact. Or with somebody like Jimmy or Abbeydale, can speak directly to his customers, whereas bigger breweries
for us that's kind of growing, because we've only done small pack relatively recently, like the past year and a half, 2 years, which means in the past we were just dealing with pubs. We weren't dealing with the people who drank our beer, which is the end point of that. Our customer, is the drinker.
Yeah.
But we've always had a middleman that happened to
be. We didn't have a direct route to your customer almost. Yeah.
Well, whereas now we're doing small pack, we can. There's a shorter route to market by being able to give someone a can of beer.
Yeah. Meet the brewer and everything else. And
but I think that's becoming across all the kind of small breweries, being able to do well packaged beer from whether it's from mobile canning lines, which we use at the moment, but we're looking at doing it. We are in the process of buying a canning line ourselves, but it's one of those things that opens not just our own distribution network, which was, well, we've been going 20 odd years, so it's from we deliver 80 miles within our brewery, but we can now send cans and key kegs away to get to places that we never normally drive to because it's too far away.
Yeah.
And so we can get to places like Cornwall, to bottle shops in Cornwall. We can get to places because they buy through other places. So it's alternative routes to market that open up options for small breweries, that you don't just focus on trying to break this local scene, because at the moment in Sheffield, and I know that say in Manchester as well, it is really saturated with local beer, because there's in Manchester there's loads of so much really good beer. And there aren't very many independent tap lines. And in Sheffield it's similar, but it's just trying to encourage the pubs to take a bit of a punt to buying something new and something interesting.
Coming back to your original question right at the start, James, I remember looking at the Brewdog annual return, their annual financial return a couple of years ago, and tucked away amongst it was that they were selling 0.1%, even as a big company 2 years ago, 0.1% of all the beer sold in the UK. And when I looked at that, you do question sometimes whether it's saturation. But when I looked at that, I thought, well, you know what I mean? It's just incredible that it's easy within the craft beer scene to think that everyone's big players, because it's a narrow scene. And when you look at that and look at a little statistic like that, it just made me think, well, good grief, what the hell is out there potentially for breweries and for the right pubs and the right micro pubs and bars.
It's hard, isn't it? Because it's still, as Nick was saying, it's still less than 10% of all beer sales in the UK. What we would class as the kind of beers that we'd buy. You know, the vast majority of it is the stuff that we dismiss. You know, the stuff that you think, well, that's on its way out, but actually it's still, you know, probably 90% of sales.
And I used to drink Carling. We've all been there back in the day, and everyone's on a journey. And someone drinking Carling now might just take that next right-hand turn at Stansell, Sheffield Pilsner, and then start to progress into the craft scene.
Okay, I don't know about anyone else, but my glass is empty. I'm ready for beer number 3, which is interesting considering the conversation that we've just had, because this is a brewery that we would class as being kind of a fairly big player on the craft beer scene.
Yeah. So we have Magic Rock, based at Huddersfield. The beer that we've gone for is the Core Pale Ale, High Wire. I don't know, probably I would imagine one of their original brews. When we opened in November 2013, we opened with 10 bottles of High Wire. That's because I was a scaredy cat and didn't have a clue how much
released the officially shop. The head brewer, who's Stuart Ross, used to brew in Hillsborough, in the Hillsborough Hotel, which was once Crown Brewery.
It was.
So they were making just underneath a tiny little pub. Well, it's a pub kind of with 3 rooms, and making some quality beers for £2.50. So Hillsborough Pale Ale, did some other kind of more higher ABV ones like what do you call now? Some like kind of like more like on the IPA kind of section. Thinking these beers are incredible. And it was like maybe a few years later, he joined with Rich, who was running My Brewery Tap, like an online beer shop, and they forged what now is Magic Rock. So basically, I was in there drinking their beers, thinking, I'm following this guy because this guy knows how to brew.
Yeah.
And then basically saying, right, when you release some beers, and they did like these kind of really core release beers, like bottled, which were High Wire, Rapture, and Cannonball. Which you can still get now.
Yeah.
And from whatever, it must have been a couple of years, and literally they released nothing that was in any kind of package.
Their releases of bottles back then were incredibly rare as well.
Yeah, so I was looking at my Instagram
account
from
there wasn't
2011.
a core available. Yeah.
How popular are they now, Magic Rock?
Massively.
Yeah. Within this scene, one of the real big players. And for us in Sheffield, very luckily, we're on the end of a train line from there.
Quite a slow train line, to be fair. Though.
It's a pretty line up through Brockhills and the hills, Penistone and out that way. But at the end of it, you've got a real jewel. So in addition to the sportsmen that you have to pass on way to Magic Rock Tap, which is impossible to pass, I might add, are a phenomenal pub. But of course they've got their brewery tap that's probably 3 years or so now, 2 years, 3 years since they
part of their expansion
moved
in
brewery.
Yeah. I saw something on Twitter today. I couldn't tell you what it was, but saying like this is the actual pit, like this is the perfect brewery tap.
Yeah.
Like there is nothing close to it.
Have you been? I've never been.
It's
It's a timely conversation, this, because we're in the process of planning what we're calling our first Hopcast away day, where we're heading out of Sheffield.
I did honestly forget about it.
Yeah,
I got past you because you actually part of it.
And we're going to go and visit effectively a brewery kind of somewhere else. And Magic Rock is, fingers crossed, it's pretty much all in the bag. It's going to be the first kind of place outside of Sheffield that we're going to go and visit. Not for a while, probably in June when the weather is beautiful and lovely. So it'll probably throw it down, which pretty much guaranteed. But yeah, I mean, I can't. However, I try and think about Magic Rock, I just can't deny the fact that I love their beers. I think they're a great brewery. Most recently, I can't remember the actual names of them, but the Tropical IPA and the Double IPA that have come out in the last couple of weeks, which I know for you, Sean, they sold out within pretty much 24 hours. Yeah. They're just gone. I really like what they do.
I think their kind of business model kind of also harks back to the kind of oversaturation of the market that kind of came up earlier, is that brewery businesses are changing slightly in that they're not just dealing directly with pubs, they're starting to own their own pubs. They're starting to look at places that they can run themselves, whether it is tap rooms that are only open at weekends, which is great because it means that they're the busiest days anyway, that you open on a Friday night and you shut on a Saturday afternoon and then you get ready to brew on a Monday morning. Those things are kind of a great way of getting people in, selling directly. You can make the most money out of the beer. You don't need to sell it onto a third party like Sean let him make the money. You can make it yourself. And
half in the States are a great example of that. In Brooklyn, in New York, and I saw a post on their Instagram feed a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't very visual. It was a long paragraph. And it was giving instructions on buying beer direct from their brewery on a Saturday morning. That's when they released their cans. And the earliest time you were allowed to queue up from outside, and they were being very strict on this, was 3 a.m. People had been turning up before that time and causing a little bit too much noise residentially, locally, and so they were being
Were they just coming from the night out to get the cans?
They ought to have a live web feed of the queue, really, I think, and that would be very entertaining. But they were being very strict and very pointed about 3 a.m. must not be breached or should be removed. So
I think
it's incredible.
One of the things about England and the UK is that we're still small, so our beer, no matter where it goes to, is still fresh.
Yeah.
We don't need to travel.
Yeah.
People from other half that are living in California don't need their beer to travel 2,000 miles. At most, it needs to travel 400.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Land's End, John O'Groats, and there isn't a brewery at Land's End.
We know more about other half in that they've been at the last two hop cities than people in California do. I would potentially guess. I'm not sure whether they're licensed to sell. I know breweries have to get a license in every state to sell their beer over in the States, and so that makes it particularly complicated for them.
And it's this kind of conversation about cold storage as well. Like the Americans are really focused on kind of cold storage and brewery, and then cold chain distribution, and having a chilled wagon or a chilled freight cart to do it. Yeah. Well, at most there's 8 hours in between cold stores. The cold chain doesn't necessarily need to happen to keep the beer fresh. We just need to get it to people, and so there needs to be an increase in kind of working with UK Mail and distributors, but we just
What of Highwire then?
Highwire is a West Coast Pale Ale, 5.5%.
One sentence to sum it up from all of you. Adam.
Oh, God, come back to me.
Clean and crisp.
Clean and crisp from Sean. Jim? Is he down to mouthful?
I'm just drinking. I think it's a classic. It's one of those
I was going to say modern classic, and that's almost like stealing the Brewdog terminology.
But it is, and it's
kind of is.
It's citric. It's fresh.
Now,
it's still slightly bitter.
I'm interested. Rich, is this a beer that you've had before?
No.
Because for us, it's kind of like a bit of a mainstay classic, whereas for you, it's kind of new. What do you think?
You know, I like the citrus kind of stuff anyway, and it ticks that box, but it's a little bit of a fizz to it that I'm kind of not quite.
Overcarbonated.
I couldn't drink lots of it because of that.
Okay.
I came to me just before Jim said, but it is a bit like a modern classic, and it is kind of a bit of a gateway beer for somebody who might be a bit of a kind of high strength lager drinker.
Yeah.
That's a good description.
And that's probably where that fizz comes into a little bit.
We bang on about this a bit, but I think it's a good kind of thing to say. Like, if you want a bit of conversion beer.
Of course, there's a grapefruit version as well, which is also very, very
Which
nice.
I think is a gateway beer.
Next step along. You go with Highwire first, then onto the grapefruit one, and that takes you onto other things. Right, time for our Meet the Brewer, and let's hear all about Neepsend Brewery.
Hi, my name's Gavin. I am the co-owner and head brewer of Neepsend Brew Co.
Hi, I'm Hannah. Hannah Bolton-Tyte, and I'm a brewer at Neepsend Brew Co.
To start off, can you tell us a little bit about the history of Neepsend Brew Co? We've been going for nearly 3 years now, so we set up in June 2015. This brewery where we're sat now actually used to be Little Dale Cart Brewery. They moved out of their small kit in the Wellington, kind of expanded into this space, and for whatever reason didn't quite work out for them. And sort of the opportunity to move in here came along, sort of between myself and James, who owns the Sheaf View and the Blake Hotel, and now the Wellington as well. So really, we did something we've both been wanting to do for a while. This opportunity came along and we've run with it.
So you see a lot of your beers around, predominantly cask, covering lots of different styles. You do have a small core range of beers that you do. Just kind of interested if you could tell us a little bit more about the beers that you brew here.
You mentioned the small range of core ales that we brew. We only brew one, and that's Neepsend Blonde, our 4% session ale. Other than that, it's basically us two playing around with all of our favourite hops and a selection of different malts and just getting on with it, really. Making sure we've got a good range to meet the pubs that we supply.
Are there any beers that are your favourite to brew, or are there any beers that you've got in the pipeline that you're really looking forward to brewing?
Favourite's a difficult one because we've brewed more than 100 different beers now. We keep new ones coming all the time, and a lot of the fun for it for me is brewing new ones and trying new ones. I mean, for our 100th brew, we did a really heavily hopped IPA called Century IPA, and then for our 200th brew, we did Double Century IPA, where they're both strong, mega hoppy beers, and they're two of my favourites, probably. But because there's so many, I mean, honestly, if we do a one-off brew of them, occasionally, you'll barely get a chance to try it in the pub before it's gone, which gets it interesting for us and for customers, but it does also mean that it's a little bit difficult to know what some of them are like, really.
So just to go through a few different sort of styles that you do, I do see you don't kind of want to just stick to your hoppy pales. You do quite a big range of things. Can you go through kind of sort of styles that you might find in your pubs?
Well, we always try and make sure we've got a decent stout in stock anyway. Our most recent one's Connerswell, nice 4.9% hazelnut porter. We're quite famous for our salt caramel stout, which we brewed last year. That flew out in record time. Other than that, obviously, because our pubs, as in the Sheaf, the Wellington and the Blake, all need a range of styles, we'll always try and make sure we've got an amber ale coming through at some point. And again, we try and play around with hops that maybe we haven't used before, or we think will marry well with that style. So other than that, it's making sure we've got a good stock for the pubs, basically.
So you say you've got the three pubs that are own the brewery, is that right? Or is it in collaboration with you as the owners?
They're separate businesses technically, but they're tied in. I mean, James, who owns the three pubs, is the largest shareholder in the brewery as well. So yeah.
So apart from those three pubs, where else might people who kind of want to go out and find Neepsend Brew, where might they find those beers?
I mean, we've got a few other regular stockists in Sheffield and in the local area. The Beer Engine always has Blonde on, and then with the commercial at Chapel Town's also a permanent stockist. There's a couple of places outside in sort of North Derbyshire as well. And we just brew quite a lot of our beers because we source a lot of the guest beers for the pubs we supply as well. We swap a fair bit, so our beers get up and down the country through those relationships and through a few of the wholesalers we use. So you'll not find Neepsend beer on the bar of every pub in Sheffield. There's a few we deal with, but there's quite a lot of it gets further afield as well, which is great for us. I'll only find out through Untapped that one of our beers we brewed is on the bar in Truro, which is bizarre, but really cool.
This is not a trick question, or it might not be something you can answer, but I just wanted to throw in there is, how do you think you compare to other breweries in the city, or what do you think sets you aside from them?
I wouldn't want to make comparisons particularly. And what's great about Sheffield is there are so many breweries. I think, well, when they had that Sheffield beer report that came out last year, I think 23 was the number in the Sheffield City region, which is fantastic. It's a really diverse, dynamic, interesting brewing scene. Some breweries are more traditional, some breweries are more experimental. We just do what we do. We never set out brewing with a particular agenda, other than just having some fun, brewing some beer that we really enjoy, and hoping other people enjoy it as well. So yeah, for us, that's more often than not pale hoppy beer, because that's what I like to drink certainly, and also what goes down well in the pubs we supply, and what Hannah likes to drink. So yeah, we just do what we do, and hopefully people enjoy it.
So, talking about what you like to drink, Hannah, I know it's, like I said in the previous question, you have predominantly cask beers. You do have a few that you do on keg, and you don't, as far as I know, bottle or can anything at the minute. Is there any plans for extending your range, or are you going to keep doing your very strong cask range?
I think for now, basically, we've got 2 new fermenting vessels that we're waiting to get all plumbed in. Once we've got those in, we could potentially look at bottling, because we'll actually have the tank space to be able to do that. Because at the moment, and consistently really, we don't ever really have a lull in trade. We're always busy and we'll always need to keep brewing, which is a great situation to be in, but it's certainly not something that would rule out in the future.
What thoughts do you have on Sheffield's current beer scene, and where do you think things are going to go in the next 12 months, and where do you think you might fit into that?
I suppose I covered that a little bit on the previous question, but the industry has changed so much in the last 2 or 3 years, particularly. There are styles of beers all over bars now you wouldn't have seen. Sour beers, obviously, a lot more keg beer, a lot of can beer, a lot of just more interestingly flavoured beers and stronger beers. I love all that. It's fantastic. You know, we've got our own sort of operation. We do, at the moment, mostly cask beer. It's not traditional beer. It's full flavoured, hop-forward, interesting beer. But our market is cask at the moment, and all of our growth has been organic. We've not really set a target as such. We've just thrown into our own space. So we'll be in 12 months doing the same thing probably producing a little bit more beer, and with a shiny, exciting tap room.
I just want to add as well, we've been lusting after a little mini kit for quite a while so that we can try out weird, wacky, wonderful brews that we're a bit too scared to try out on the big kit and, 40 casks or kegs or whatever of. So that's something we're going to be looking to in the future. And also, I'd like to say that the opportunity to collaborate with so many different breweries, which Gavin planned in to coincide with Sheffield Beer Week, has been fantastic for us, because we've brewed 2 sour beers, we've brewed beers in different styles than we normally would, more bitterness, for example, and that's been a great way for us to learn how other people do things and also share information, basically, and take on little bits from other people.
You talked about your collaborations, and there was a lot of talk about celebrating the women in beer and Sheffield Beer Week. What's your thoughts on the strength of women in beer at the minute, and did you enjoy kind of getting involved with some of the other women that were involved?
Absolutely. Personally, I thought it was a fantastic opportunity to not only meet with female brewers and female people within the brewing industry, but obviously there are less women in making beer, for example, than there are men. It is a male-dominated industry, but that shouldn't be a reason for any person, gender irrelevant, to think, oh, I might not be accepted within that trade. We did a pomelo sour called Emmeline at Lost Industry, and I was also involved in International Women's Collaboration Brew Day brew over at Ashover, where we brewed a pineapple IPA, and both those days were brilliant for me. And again, it's just learning new ways of doing things and sharing information, and I think it's fantastic. So yeah, long may it last.
Actually, last month on the podcast, we had Emmeline as one of the beers, and I think it was the collective favourite beer of the month, so well done on that one. Gav, you just touched on it slightly. I spoke to you guys on Twitter just into the new year about coming down and talking to you, and you were saying, you had some exciting news in the pipeline, and that kind of got unveiled at Sheffield Beer Week. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we're sat right now recording this when there's not a van in the way, is our our tap room, which we opened up for the first time for the closing party of Sheffield Beer Week, which was, considering it was a rather snowy day, and brewery is not the warmest places in the world. It was a really, really good day. We had a lovely turnout, and just everyone a good send off to what was a great week. And Sheffield Beer Week's always amazing. So yeah, we've put this space in the front of the brewery because we had the space to do it. We've put a bar in, fenced off the brew house itself, so people can come in and see where the beers we're serving here get made. I'm just going to open the doors up once a month, coincide when Pedlar's Market's on. Have a bit of a shindig down here. Have people in a tap room session. Just talking about how the beer industry's changed in Sheffield. This area has changed hugely as well. In Neepsend, the Kelham Island area has got so much busier and so much more diverse and so much more going on. And it's just, we're quite lucky to be where we are. And this is a way of just getting a bit more involved in that as well. I'll be looking forward to over the next year.
Thanks for your time.
Time for the final beer of the night, and we've done a bit of a tour of the UK so far. Now we're off to Scandinavia. The beer is called Pretty. It is a pale ale. So this comes from. Do you know how we are supposed to pronounce this brewery?
Oh. It's Oh Brewing.
That's definitely the Barnsley version, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who are they?
None of the O's with the lines through it, like to all.
No. So they are a. Yeah. They don't have their own brewery. They're very good friends with Sticklebract brewery in Gothenburg in Sweden, so brew most of their beers out of there. Very, very rare, hard to get for us as a retailer, hard to get. Have an IPA Narangi, which is generally received as one of Europe's sort of best IPAs. This beer is called Pretty, which I think is a beautiful name, again for a simple 5.5% pale ale. Bottle looks the part, again without being, you wouldn't suggest looking at that label that they're over sort of trying things. Just a pretty little label, pretty little beer. And Scandinavia needs to be represented. Scandinavia playing a big part in what people are drinking here in the UK and across Europe at the minute. And take your pick from a point of view of the countries. You've been to Gothenburg as well as Copenhagen.
Yeah, and actually the right country. Yeah. I went to a couple of places like beer-wise. Didn't find it kind of overly like kind of craft. This is going back maybe 2 years, but did find a couple. But again, like Scandinavia is so expensive to drink in if you're kind of converting your own money. I mean, I went to one place and we were looking at nearly £10 for like. We're not even a pint really, 500, 400. Like I said, it's got the breweries. You can see come through like Omnipolo there, aren't they as well? And I've not tried this yet, but it's my first try of OO.
How long have you had this in then? Is this like quite a new beer?
Yeah, got it from Bottle Shop distribution in London. It's probably been here 2 weeks, I would have thought, at the most. Narangi IPA sold out almost instantly. Just got a few of these left. There's a Baltic Porter that there's a style they're less known for brewing the dark beers, and so that's just still available. But they're hard to get, and so they're the type of brewery that you jump on when they become available. Yeah. You have to pre-reserve them. So.
It's got, you compare it to the Kernel, which we said was quite a simple beer. It feels like it's got a lot going on. Yeah. There's a lot going on in my mouth when I drink that. Yeah.
It's much more full-bodied than the Kernel one.
Plenty of bitterness as well.
It's not. It's really. I'm kind of quite fruity.
I'm getting the citrusy again. I'm kind of.
But not like you sort of standard one. It's more like. In the mouth, I think.
It's just not a focus on a single hop like the Kernel was. It's just a really good mix of a lot of like some really nice hops.
It all works together.
Yeah, if someone dropped that in front of you, we haven't told you what it was, you'd be more than happy to kind of quaff away at that.
So tonight, with the exception of the Sheffield theme last time, tonight's the first time we've had a theme to our beers, and yet they have all been very distinctly different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Despite carrying a very similar theme, pale ales. 4 really good beers tonight. It is decision time. Rich, your Twitter is at Dickie Owl.
Dickie Owl, that's me. Yes.
What has been your favourite beer of tonight?
The Kernel.
Go for the Kernel.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my favourite. Yeah, definitely.
Brill. Jim, you and Laura, your beer blog is at Mashton and Meow.
Correct.
What has been your favourite beer of tonight?
I'm going to concur. That Kernel was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. So
A clear leader so far. Sean, you're on Twitter at Beer Central Ltd.
Yep. And
Are you going the Kernel as well?
Despite Kernel being the real love of my life, in addition to Deborah, of course.
You had to get that.
Out of these, all of them, she's a lover of pale ales. Her favourite pale ale is Gamma Ray by some
So
way.
probably the Highway.
Probably. I am in love with the small stuff from Cloudwater, so small Loral Pale is my favourite beer tonight.
Okay, I'm going to deviate from the way that we normally do this because I am going to go next because I'm also voting for the Cloudwater.
Alright, so Adam is...
So I'm going to give Adam either the deciding vote or he's going to go for something completely different. It's going to be a draw.
I'm going to go different actually. I'm going to go for this one. I like the
he's chickened out. He's chickened out.
No.
A big decision.
What I'm going to say is I've had a few of the small beers and I've been critical of Cloudwater. Absolutely fantastic. I've had the Citra one on keg, and like you've heard me before, the Kernel stuff, range wise, I would say go out and get any of them. Not my particular favourite on this actual beer, but I think this one just had a little bit more
brewing,
to it that I want to
pale
get,
ale.
which I'm still enjoying now. The OO Pretty Pale Ale is the one for me. So 2-all. I don't know what you're going to do for that.
I think it's alright to have a draw. I think it's alright to
do a fight or something.
distinctly different.
We don't have to have a winner.
I'm sorry,
It's like cricket.
Penalty shootout.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So
No, it's a draw. It's like cricket. We spent all this time and no one
I'm going to
wins.
go. On this two, I'm going to go for the Cloudwater.
Wow, so the 2.9% beer
2.9%.
has won.
Yeah.
Wow, who saw that coming? Brilliant. Before we go tonight, I just want to give a quick mention to the Sheffield University Beer Festival, which is taking place at the very beginning of May. So lots of information about it knocking about on the internet. We'll tweet a couple of links as well. So we are recording next month's podcast a little bit later than this month, purely because we want to be able to reflect on that. But thank you for your company. As ever, we would love your feedback. Drop us an email to beer at sheffieldhopcast.co.uk and we'll see you next month.
Come back, Laura.
You wish.